Hey everybody, Alan from Dicewrench, and I just want to make a quick walkthrough here of upgrading from Foliage Renderer 1 to Foliage Renderer 2. Foliage Renderer 2 introduces some new components, it renames some old components. GUIDs have been preserved everywhere possible, but there is a little bit of upgrade work for you to do, and that's why we're calling it Foliage Renderer 2. It's the same system. If you bought Foliage Renderer 1, you have access to the exact same GitHub that we'll be using for Foliage Renderer 2. It is the same product. It's just moving to a new asset store location. And because of the breaking changes, we want to make it clear that you're dealing with a new thing. I just want to walk you quickly through how to do that upgrade though. If you find yourself in this position or you've been using an old version of Foliage Renderer 1, you're getting back into your project and you need to upgrade to 2, and you're maybe not familiar with everything. There's only a couple steps you need to do. First off, I'm here in the example scene in a semi-broke state, and I'll walk you through how to upgrade and get this back to running like you expect it to be. The easiest way to do this is to just go to Create Foliage Render here in the Create menu. This will make sure you have an Indirect Draw Manager, which is the new name for the Terrain Foliage Render component you know from before. It will make sure you have an Indirect Renderer. It will find all of your terrain foliage providers, and it will add the necessary components and attach them like you would expect. It will also make sure all of your cameras have indirect cameras, and it will make sure that your scene is rendering correctly. So you can literally just click this button and turn this video off, and Godspeed. But if for some reason you have an additive scene setup or more of a prefab-based workflow and your loading's a little more complicated, you might need to do this manually. So let's go through the steps in detail. First thing you're going to want to do, go to Window, Foliage Render, make sure your Scene View Refresh is checked on. If you hit Create Foliage Render, it will do that for you. But this will make sure that our scene camera is registered with the indirect camera, right? We have 2 registered cameras currently because I sort of broke this scene in order to show you this example. So our main camera is already in here. But as Foliage Renderer has matured, now it supports multiple cameras. Those cameras need to be registered with the indirect renderer in order to run the culling process. Okay, so there's that. That's step 1. So for our main camera, we will need to go in here and we will need to add a component. We'll add an indirect camera. That takes care of that. We'll find our terrain foliage renderer. Now, here you can see we've got an indirect draw manager. There's nothing to render right now because nothing's currently being provided. The GUIDs for Indirect Draw Manager and Terrain Foliage Renderer are the same, so this should just work. But if for some reason you end up in a weird state where you have a missing component on your Terrain Foliage Renderer, remove that missing component and you're going to add component and you're going to choose the Indirect Draw Manager, and then you'll be all set. This does the same thing Foliage Renderer used to do, the Foliage Renderer component. It sort of collates draws and submits them to the Indirect Renderer. On your terrain, you'll have a terrain foliage provider here, but we have sort of decoupled the concerns of tree and detail providing because you may only need one for your particular terrain, depending on your project. So you'll notice you'll have either nothing in here or you'll be missing a tree provider and a detail provider. But conveniently, I've given you a little plus button here. You could just hit plus and it will add the component you need and attach it and sort of set it up with its default settings. And now you're back at business. I like to have these refresh when they get enabled. I like to have these refresh when transforms change. Sometimes this one's better on update. And there you go. Now we have our indirect camera. Our indirect draw manager has now grabbed the tree and detail prototypes in use. So this looks more like we're used to. You'll notice the rollouts have changed a little bit. We don't have default settings in its own category now. It's dependent on the draw type. So if you only have trees to draw, you'll only have a tree draw settings rollout here, default settings at the top, and then you can sort of do your overrides like normal. And then similarly for detail draws or object draws if you add one of the object modules down the road. And that is it. Now you're 100% back in business. It's that easy. It's you just gotta click those buttons. Make sure this thing's there. So you should be back up and running in no time. You'll be in the sort of cleaner, more awesome, more modular future of FR2. And we will be moving forward with new modules and all the extra fun stuff that we're adding to the system in the near future. But there you go. That is your upgrade workflow. TLDR, hit that button. If you don't want to hit that button and you got to do it cute, there you go. Those are the steps. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy.